if you look, if we look to the past, right, with 4G and 5G, if we look at the standardization effort and MWC, traditionally the hype begins 3 years before the standard is published, right? So if we say that it's 2030 that the 6G standard will publish, then it's MWC 2027 where the hype begins. Now, it's a different world we live now compared to 5G, right? But still, I expect that key messages next year will start to be 6G at the MWC.
Right, I was going to make the point that it won't be until WRC 27 where the industry should have its answer on whether 6G RAT will require its own network core. Because 2 years ago, the pitch was run your 6G radio layer alongside and, you know, on top of the 5G standalone core. And I thought that was the plan. And then at, you know, this year's Mobile World Congress, I got on the last day a different answer of, oh yeah, maybe the Chinese vendors will do their own core. And so like this efficiency pitch of 5G standalone mopping up all the sort of legacy technical debt into this lovely IP native, you know, fully virtualized thing. If suddenly we're just going to slap another 6G core on it, then you're kind of like shooting all of your toes off. Like it's just completely undermining one of the sort of main selling points of standalone. And then if you are going to do that and you're an existing MNO that is struggling, I can't really see the sort of justification to move from 5G non-standalone into 5G standalone, because if you're, you know, fated to end up on 6G, then you'll just take 6G as well and you just run it alongside whatever mess of multi-vendor, you know, legacy debt you have. And to that end, I think it's nuts that it's going to be WRC, I think, is in October 2027.
November, I think. It's like all
Is it
of
November?
November.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I think it's nuts that we won't have a solid answer as an industry 2 years before like IMT 2030 is meant to be like finalized. So if anyone out there is listening, like, please sort that out. That's a really big problem. Because if it doesn't, then yeah, I think the sort of looming skills gap, like the loss of institutional knowledge, is a big problem. And I can see a point where these sort of generally fairly incompetent like MNOs are just utterly reliant on vendors and black boxes running their networks. And I don't think that's a good thing. That's not an outcome we want to get to. I think the AI piece is quite valuable, but yeah, if we're running a whole network on prompting, then that's pretty uncomfortable, right? That's quite a bit of vendor lock-in.
But then we stumble onto this cultural discussion, Alex, right? And there is inertia and friction in changing this model. But to their defense, telcos have to provide this 5 nines capability that cannot be handled by redundancy, like in the cloud. And also, we have to remember that they are subject to lawful intercept. So their networks need to be operating at all times, right? So I know we, as analysts, keep, complaining that telcos don't move fast enough, but I think their hands are tied, right? And they've started with 2G and they've bolted things on the network. And many networks are like a collection of hardware and software held together by string, so to speak.
Yep.
And they have no choice. I mean, even if we look at greenfield telcos, I think the dish integration was a nightmare, right? And a few vendors handled the integration, which was very painful, right? And now there's only Rakuten as a greenfield. So I don't think this is a problem that may be solved by 6G. And by the way, it seems that the consensus around 6G is that it is a predominantly radio upgrade, right? A new air interface. Whether this is a new multiplexing scheme and MCS schemes, it's a different story. But to your argument earlier, I think that before we consider 6G, most operators will have moved to SA. And now, looking back at 5G, we fully understand that the dual approach of NSA and SA has been a monumental mistake, and 3GPP is shell-shocked by this decision now and making sure that the same will not happen with 6G, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
every 3GPP report out that my team does, they always make a point to say 6G will leverage as much of 5G as possible, right? And then it's also, let's simplify. Let's not have 5 different options. You have one, right? Or like for each, pick 3 frequency bands and there's one subcarrier spacing, right? Like there is so much being taken from 5G and kind of those flexibility mistakes that 3GPP is trying to implement.
Speaking of this evolution, then, I mean, I know people have talked about 6G as being potentially one of the the first AI native generation, and I have to admit I'm not sure necessarily what that means, especially if we're talking about now evolving the 5G core for that. I mean, Sarah, we have a bit of time left here. Do you see the work that you're doing, and for example, the demonstrations you've shown as being actually what that AI native 6G will translate into? Or do you see that as being something a bit grander?
That's a hard question. I mean, we're seeing AI is popping up everywhere. And for like every different working group and every different little subset of things that's going on in 3GPP, there's no longer like an AI specific one. It's just AI as a conversation as part of everything. And with the proliferation and growth and sophistication of all of these tools, it's going to be AI native in the sense that AI is going to be helping design this, and we're going to be inserting AI into the network as it makes sense, not everywhere, but as it makes sense, in a way that we've never done before, just because of the maturity of the technology. So I think there's a lot of ways that you can slice and dice it, but we're seeing it being injected in places and in ways that were just never possible before. So maybe that's my thoughts on the definition of AI native. I don't know. It means something different to everyone. So I am curious to hear Dimitris and Alex.
So in 3GPP, we have to consider that the best technology does not necessarily end up being in the specification, right? That's one thing. So, and we also have to consider that there's patent maxing in 3GPP. So companies try to promote their own ideas, which have patents behind them, which are not published, by the way. So they don't disclose their patent holdings. So this has always been a strong strategic focus of all companies in 3GPP. But like Sarah says, AI is everywhere, right? So it can be AI used for automation all the way up to tokenization as a service now being discussed as part of the 6G network, right? But we have to consider that there is a certain element of backwards compatibility needed for all of these things, and also the relative unwillingness of 5G operators to invest the same amount of capex into deploying 6G, right? So as it stands now, operators are willing to invest very gradually into building out their 6G networks, perhaps starting from urban areas and expanding outwards. So in other words, it seems that it's a urban technology for now, right? But you never know how things will develop and whether, for example, satellite will be baked into the spec, and 6G will not even require rural or suburban coverage, right? So in other words, it's the stage of standardization that many things are being discussed, and sensing as well. That's another hot topic, and there's no clear direction yet.
Yeah, at the moment, no one can agree what AI means. So, like, yeah, it's very difficult. I think for the MNOs, they're fed up being dumb pipes. they want to provide more, and that's why things like the Internet of Things, which is where I got started professionally, like that was why there was so much hype for that, because it should have been this, brand new opportunity for them. And like I'm quite jaded, because I was there watching all the marketers like move on from the Internet of Things and move to machine learning, and then cryptocurrency, and then 5G, and now they're well into like the AI piece of it. And so like the MNOs are desperate for new revenue. They're weighed down by this, technical debt. I spent a long time counting and then forecasting capex spending, and it's down in real terms. Of course, that's not a surprise. But it's up in number, but down in real terms. And so the sort of appetite for 5G has left like a really bitter taste in the mouth, because it didn't do what the massive consultancies were promising the operators. It didn't turn their fortunes around, right? There's no robo-surgery and self-driving cars. And so, anyone that pitches that in 6G, I think, is going to sort of fall foul. And to that end, I think that's why the sort of definition in the industry of what AI and AI RAN is still quite nebulous. Like, I don't think people want to like stake a claim. They don't want to be the ones that we turn around and laugh at in 3 or 4 years. And to that end, like, some operators are going to make hay, but not everyone is going to be running distributed edge computing. Some might, like SoftBank will give it a go. Like, they're pretty adamant that there's a good ROI, but it's a tier 1 operator concern, really. I don't really see tier 2, tier 3s getting into it. And so to that end, like it might only be a dozen big MNOs globally. So like if you zoom out and just look at number of MNOs, like, do we care? So yeah.
But in my opinion, this it's not a clear distinction, right? For example, everyone keeps saying, as a closing comment for me, everyone keeps saying that it's the central office of a telco that has the proper asset profile and power availability to house GPUs, right? And the only big buildings for these central office locations have been copper infrastructure for DSL. Many operators, especially the aggressive tier 1s, have decommissioned their copper networks in favor of PON and fiber. And they've sold these assets or even demolished them. So these locations no longer exist for them. But for late adopters who still have copper infrastructure, they may have the assets, right? So the early adopters may be at a loss, right? So just to say that it's not clear cut who has the assets, these distributed assets, right? I'm not saying that anyone will be successful here, but AI is mixing things up.